driving our country away from ethnic politics. I think that was a big score for the people of Kenya. And secondly, carrying out our elections peacefully. I think that was a huge mark of maturity of our democracy. And I want to thank all the people of Kenya who voted in this election, who participated in one way or another. And I want to promise them that I will consistently work towards working with all the leaders that have been elected in all the categories to drive our country into the future.
Right, and Mr. President, we'll talk about some 5 key issues. First of all, the cost of living and the state of the economy. We'll also speak about education. We'll speak about governance and politics. We'll also speak about pre-election pledges. And also we'll speak about security, both locally and internationally. And we thank you for making time to have this conversation with us. Let's get started, because at this moment, we remember hearing you on the eve of the transition of the year between 2022 and 2023. And you spoke about a conversation the country will have in 3 months' time about the cost of electricity. We look at how much one has to pay. If you, for instance, you have a bill, you pay 4,000 shillings, and you get your units, about 152 units, you find that 30% is going to fuel energy charge. You also find that the token amount is only 47%, actually less than half the amount that you're paying. And also remember, recently there was a report, a task force by your predecessor that came out and saw that we're paying so much for the cost of energy. Even if you have this conversation in 3 months' time, what will change?
Cost of living, Sam, is a sum total of many things. It's not just energy, right? It's a combination of, in fact, the biggest contributor to the cost of living is the cost of food. Many households spend up to 52% of their monthly income on food. Therefore, if we seriously want to attack the cost of living jigsaw, we must deal with the cost of food. And it is the reason why cost of living was a big part of the conversation Kenyans had in this election. And all of us made commitments in many ways. I did. And it's the reason why when I came into office, the very first thing, among the very first things I did, is to begin the journey to bring back the country to the trajectory of food production. I ordered immediately that we supply 1.5 million bags of fertilizer for the farmers in the short range category. I have progressed that. We now have the first 200,000 metric tons of fertilizer already landed in the country. We intend, as we have done, we've reduced the cost from about 6,000 to 3,500. I have also instructed that we work with even the land parcels we have within government, ADC, NYS, prisons, to make sure that we use them to produce farm inputs, including seeds, and making sure that we are self-sufficient. I have also worked out with the cabinet to ensure that, since we already have a gap that is obvious because of the kind of harvest we've had, the unreliability of rain, the high cost of inputs have contributed to where we are, you know. And for your information, Sam, this is a journey. We didn't get here yesterday.
Right.
We got here because we took 3 years not making the right decisions. We suspended the fertilizer subsidy program. We never intervened when farmers were asking for farm inputs. Today, I am promising the farmers of Kenya, just the same way we supplied the first 1.5 million acres, 1.5 million bags of fertilizer, we will supply 6 million bags of subsidized fertilizer to our farmers. We will make sure that they have the correct seed. We will ensure that they have the correct support. We are now working on mechanization. We have a program with Agricultural Finance Corporation to make sure that we increase the mechanization of our agriculture. We are currently at around 40%. We want to drive it to 80%. These are some of the interventions that fell through when we didn't get our trajectory right. But what I said, speaking to what you have said on cost of energy, there was an attempt, which was not well thought out, to try and introduce subsidies in that space, which failed miserably because we were spending 3 billion shillings every year to subsidize energy. There was no increase in consumption of electricity. There was no reduction of any products that were coming out of our factories. There was no increase of people who are getting employed because we had brought subsidy. It was just a waste. Nobody benefited. The consumers did not benefit. So it ended up just lining the bottom line of a few companies and a few people. So what I have insisted and what government of Kenya is going to do, we are going to support production of food. We are going to interrogate the cost of energy, right? We have 3-4 lines which I have instructed. We're going to spend 1 billion shillings to sort out 3 lines of transmission, 3 transmission lines, so that we can retire the plant we have in Moroni that is producing energy at 52 US cents, which is, we are getting power from our hydros at 4 US cents. Can you compare between 4 US cents and 52? And it's because we have power in Takwel, which we are not using maximum because of a transmission line. We have other hydros that we are not using because of transmission line. So I have already instructed that we complete those transmission lines within the next 10 months so that we make sure that we bring down the cost of energy, because we will retire some of the thermal power that is causing this huge cost. Right.
So what do you do to the PPAs, the power purchase agreements and the independent power producers? Because according to the task force report, it was talking about the power cost for the financial year 2020, it was 87 billion shillings, which is 66% of the sales. They went ahead to say that, yes, the Kenyan was contributing about 72% of the power, but the resources that they were taking is about 48%. For the independent power producers, they are giving Kenya Power about 25% of power, but they're taking away about 47% of the payments. So how do you deal with that even as you go to the different transmission lines?
Precisely. First, the turbine we are retiring in Moroni belongs to government. It's a Kenyan turbine. So that we will have no conversation. We will just retire that. Then we will have to have a candid discussion with our thermal energy producers. And for your information, we need them. The problem is, for the last 5 years, we haven't generated much of power. We have 400 megawatts of capped geothermal energy, which I have instructed that we should move with speed to unlock that potential. Because much as we want to retire the thermal power, we have a challenge of the amount of supply of power during the peak hours. So we are juggling between making sure that we use what we have efficiently, we generate the much more efficient power sources so that we can begin the journey to retire the thermal ones. But this requires a consistent, approach and consistent follow-up. And that's what I intend to do.
All right. Your Excellency, going back to the cost of living, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says inflation rate is now at 9.5, at least by November last year. When you come into office, the first thing you do is to remove subsidy on the likes of unga. Now, the big question is, as you run the program on subsidizing the cost of production, is government saying it was unable to also run the program on subsidizing unga so much that you remove the pinch on Kenyans who are feeling the pain as they go to the supermarkets to buy unga?
John, Do you know how much those subsidies were costing us? It was costing us 16 billion shillings every year to subsidize fuel. It was costing us 3 billion shillings did I say every year? Every month.
Every month.
It was costing us 8 billion shillings every month to subsidize unga. It was costing us 3 billion shillings to subsidize electricity. A total of 25, 26 billion shillings every month. The decision to subsidize unga, fuel, and electricity was not an economic decision. It was a political decision. It was meant to placate Kenyans to vote in a certain way. Unfortunately, Kenyans did not buy it because they did not feel it. They looked for this unga of 100 shillings, they did not find. They waited for the price of things to come down, it did not come down, right? Because it was a political decision. So, did you, John, expect me seriously to be elected president? And I know what is right, to continue to do what is wrong. Because what would that do? In a year, we were going to spend 300 billion shillings on subsidy that benefits nobody. You know, it would have been the most reckless thing to do. But just to respond to your issue of inflation, yes. In October, the inflation went actually not 9.5, it went to 9.6, right? But because of the interventions we have made, inflation is now at 9.1. It's on its way down because we are making the right decisions. It will not be sorted out in a week or two or 1 month. You know, we got ourselves here because of 3 years of making the wrong decisions. But I am promising the country that within the next 1 year, we will have pulled the country from here. We will have set ourselves on the trajectory of making sure that we never again buy unga at 240. You know? Thankfully, we have put the brakes on the continued increase of prices of unga and all the other food products. At least unga now is averaging around 190 shillings from 230. The price of cooking oil has come down. So we are beginning to see the journey to sanity. And it is my intention, not just to promote the production we are doing at the moment, but also to make sure that the gap that exists between what the farmers are producing and before the next harvest is that we're going to import maize and some foodstuffs, about 10 million bags between the month of February and June, to make sure that we keep the tabs on the prices of basic food commodities not going up. We are also working full steam. And you saw me yesterday in Galana. Many people believe Galana was a wrong thing or it failed. Galana did not fail. It was made to fail, right? And I want to promise you, John and your team here and Kenyans, speaking to them directly, that we are going to make Galana work. And it's going to work beginning this February. We are going to plant maize in the first 10,000 acres. And we already have the mechanism to do it. In another 8 months, we are going to do the next 10,000 acres. And in the next 2 months, 3 months, I will be in Galana to launch the construction of the dam that will make it possible for us to do the next 300,000 acres. It is possible for us to produce 10 million bags from Galana to seal the gap that we are currently going to import, just by making sure that it works. And for your information, it is going to work. And just to show you that Galana Kulalu was sabotaged, go to the Ministry of Lands. The fellows who sabotaged it had actually subdivided it into little pieces of land.
Mr. President,
4 acres.
Just for clarity.
I don't know what, you know.
Just for clarity.
Let me ask you, do you know who was running the government of Kenya?
Yeah.
Yes.
So why are you asking the obvious?
We don't know. You're the president. You should tell us.
And you are
the deputy president.
But you are Kenyans.
Yes.
You know, when I was shown the door and I was operating from the streets as deputy president, there were people who were running this administration.
Mm-hmm. So you
unfortunately, but for the good news for the people of Kenya, it will not happen. I have cancelled the parceling of that land. I have stopped it, and it will not happen, because subdividing Galana into 2 acres, 3 acres is actually going to send people there who are going to require food relief to even live there. When we can actually, let me ask you, good people, Galana can feed 3-4 million Kenyans. Why do you want to go and settle 10,000 people? How will, even if you do math upside down, how does 4 million people compare with 10,000?
Mr. President, this question obviously asks you, and you've consistently said the subsidies were there, to quote you, to line the pockets of a few people. I think it is bestowed on you and to Kenyans to draw a line and say, who are these few people? You said 300 billion a year, for instance, for the last 3 years. That's 900 billion. Is there responsibility?
So what are you saying? I didn't understand.
Is there responsibility? Are those people who you're blaming them, are they going to take responsibility?
The subsidies did not take 3 years. The subsidies were introduced. The Unga one was introduced for 1 month. It failed miserably.
So how much money did we lose?
Yeah, we didn't lose. We paid people 8 billion shillings, but I don't know. They are saying they supplied the maize, but nobody saw the 100 shilling maize, right? If you ask Kenya Power, they are supposed to have been paid 26 billion. I asked the MD of Kenya Power, so how much money were you paid? Apart from the money that Treasury gave, which is 4 billion shillings, and it was given in July. No other money was given to them. So what did Kenya Power do? It just went into debt, more debt. So you are financing a subsidy using debt. What kind of logic is that?
Mr. President, that is injustice, that is impunity, that is corruption. What then will your government do to make sure that they get to the bottom of this? Or do we just let it go?
Let me tell you, because nobody, like for example, the Unga subsidy. When I came into office, I said we have to audit. You know, I think already 4 billion shillings had been paid. I said, before we pay the next 4 billion, we have to audit. So you're telling us you supplied this maize. Who to? Where was it supplied? You know, that's number one. Number two, when I asked Kenya Power whether they were paid this 26 billion, nobody paid them. So what did they do? They didn't charge the customers, so they went into more debt. That's why today I have to look for money to get Kenya Power out of the mess that was that they were put in by subsidies. So these are political decisions that are made for political expediency. You know, I am not here to make political decisions, because we cannot get Kenya where we all want. We have to make some of the difficult decisions. Many people are wondering, why did I cancel the subsidies? It looks nice to talk about subsidies, but you know, you have to interrogate, is it correct? It could be popular, but is it right? It is not right.
Mr. President, what do you tell a Kenyan who is watching you tonight, feeling the pinch of that pain, and knowing that there was subsidy before, and they cannot afford that unga now? What do you tell them? How long do they have to wait?
My good friend, even with the subsidy, how many Kenyans got the 100 shilling unga? How many? You know, nothing really changed for millions of Kenyans. So it is not correct for you to say they were having subsidy help them to get anything. Subsidy helped a few people. It never helped the consumer.
Right, but the cost of living...
The most important thing that has happened is that I have stopped the hemorrhage of public funds. Yeah? We are not going to go into more debt. And let me tell you, good people, the one thing that I had to do, which was the most important thing to do, is to put the brakes on the appetite for debt. And for your information, even what we had agreed, or what the former government had agreed with the World Bank, to borrow an extra 900 billion to cover the gap that existed in the budget. I have come, interrogated the 900 billion and said, please, good people, we are going to net off 300 billion. We are actually going to borrow 300 billion less because it is the right thing to do. We cannot continue to run our economy on the foundation of debt. We are going to bankrupt this country.
What happens to the deficit?
And that is why I have, you will see in the supplementary budget, we have cut down by 300 billion the borrowing. And what have I done? I have started the trajectory to build our own revenue. You know, 3 things. Everybody is going to pay debt. It's going to pay tax, right? Starting with William Ruto. Everybody is going to pay tax. There will be no waiver for nobody, right? You saw people waiving, you know, the taxes for their businesses, you know. You buy this bank, you sell that bank, you waive taxes. You know, it's not going to happen under my administration. Everybody's going to pay debt. And number 3.
Who did that, for the record?
You know, number 3, you go find out. Number 3, we are installing a new tax system. Because at the moment, we've been collecting 60% of VAT, for example. Collectible VAT. Almost 40% we are not collecting because it goes here, it pilferages there, it goes this way. The system we are now installing is going to drive the collection of VAT to between 90 and 97%.
A follow-up on that.
That way, we should be able to collect an extra 200 to 300 billion. In fact, the target I have given to KRA is that by June this year, we should be able to collect an extra 500 billion. By June this year.
How is that going to happen, Mr. President? Because when it comes to increasing the tax base and cutting spending on borrowing, then the country's business environment must be different. Something must change in the country's business environment. What are the administration's plans to improve the ease of doing business, which essentially will see a broadening of the country's tax base?
Precisely. That's what I'm telling you, my good sister Linda. I am telling you... Michelle, sorry. Michelle. That's why I'm telling you, everybody first must pay tax. Yeah, let's begin there. This is not the animal farm, where some animals are more equal than others. This is Kenya. We are all equal. Everybody pays their portion of the tax. And number 2, we are going to make sure that more people come into the space where they work with government to pay tax. What am I doing about it? As you just said, we are going to digitize all government services in the next 6 months. Yeah, e-citizen, which we had started in, we had started, ran into headwinds, and nobody wanted to sort it out. I came in, I called the e-citizen guys. We have sorted out the e-citizen shenanigans, and in the next 6 months, every government service will be available online, digitally. And with it, every government service where tax is payable is going to be collectible online. I am not going to wait for anybody to say, okay, I will file a return at the end of the month. There will be nothing like that. We will be paying tax as we spend our money, or as we do our business. That way, I can be able to broaden the tax base. I can be able to seal the leakages in the whole system. And watch this space. I intend to collect an extra 1 trillion shillings in the next 24 months and double our current collection by 2027 to make sure that we begin to drive the country from the cliff of debt back to sanity. And that's how we're going to take this forward.
Mr. President, now that you have engaged us on public debt, I have two questions. The first question is, out of our collection currently, about 65% goes to the payment of debt. Now, the dollar, when the shilling falls, that also increases our debt by about 30 billion shillings. What is your plan to ensure you get us out of this public debt crisis?
One bullet. We collect every collectible